Okay, this is the story of how Consolidated Vultee, the airplane manufacturer, got involved in the bus business after World War II, and how things went wrong, and how Charles Pirelli was tapped to try to straighten it all out, and he eventually was successful, but it was a lot of work. The Consolidated Vultee Company was making airplanes until World War II. After World War II, when it ended, they had to come up with something else. Now, they had some contracts coming in, but they thought the bus business would take care of their Nashville division. And here are some pictures of Fort Worth, Vultee Field. That's probably Los Angeles, I'm not sure. And then this is Nashville here, where half of that building was turned over to bus manufacturing. They also had the San Diego, which was the big main campus. Stinson. I just can't remember where that is. And they were building the B-36 and a lot of different things, but they thought that the bus division would be good for them. And they were quite proud of it. In their annual report in 1946, it talked all about what they were making, the different types of buses, and the trolley coaches. And they were excited about their Hall Scott engine division, and along with the big Invaders and the Defenders, big engines. And things went awry with the bus manufacturing and the engine division. Anytime you're trying to have any kind of enterprise, you have to be able to put a product together and keep your costs down and make your quality up. And that's on the production side. On the sales side, they had a tremendous amount of demand in the beginning. And I can go through it here real quick. ACF Brill Motors Company, an associated company of Consolidated Vultee Aircraft Company, in 1946 delivered the largest number of motor coaches ever delivered by the company in a single year. Production of trackless trolley coaches, in which the company had pioneered, totaled more than half of the total delivered last year in the entire United States. Although this record production totaled more than 1,000 units, the company expects to triple this figure in the coming year. Present production of ACF Brill, second largest manufacturer in the industry, consists of the intercity parlor coach, the 36-passenger city and suburban bus, and the trackless trolley coach. All three models are produced at the Philadelphia plant, which currently employs approximately 33,000 persons. More than 50 operators throughout the country received shipments of new vehicles the past year. The intercity coach was the first post-war model to be placed in production, and approximately 50% of deliveries were in this model for high-speed over-the-highway operations. City transit buses and trackless trolley coaches constituted the balance of shipments. In the latter field, ACF Brill has constructed more than 40% of all the trackless trolleys in service today, as well as substantial quantities for export. Orders for new equipment total more than $70 million, representing a backlog of almost 500,000 coaches of all three types. Of this amount, orders were received for more than 2,000 vehicles in 1946, which is more than twice the total production achieved during the year. Plant facilities in Philadelphia have been improved and enlarged. In addition, the Nashville division of Consolidated Vultee will begin manufacture of a new and larger city bus during 1947 to supplement production by ACF Brill. The company also continues to engage in research and development projects designed to meet future needs of the bus transportation industry. Such activities are reflected in present developments, such as the world's first air-conditioned city bus, an innovation still exclusive with ACF Brill. Under licensing agreement with Canadian Car and Foundry Company Limited, several hundred Canadian Car Brill buses and trolley coaches were delivered in 1946. Hall Scott Motor Company. Present production of Hall Scott Motor Car Company, a wholly owned subsidiary of ACF Brill located in Berkeley, California, is concentrated on the famous horizontal under-the-floor gasoline motor coach engines, which power Brill buses produced both in the United States and in Canada. Bus engines of two principal types ranging from 150 to 275 horsepower are used to power city and intercity transit buses. Hall Scott is also producing large engines for use in heavy-duty, high-speed trucks, known as the Series 400. This type of engine is the most powerful truck engine built and is designed to operate on gasoline, butane, propane, and natural gas. Production is continuing on the well-known marine engines, the Invader and the V-12 Defender, both of which were used extensively during the war. The company also produces special purpose industrial engines for operations such as oil well drilling, pumping, and generating electricity. So this was the situation, but they had production problems both at Nashville and Lycoming, and that was on the production side. The problems on the other side were that a whole lot of cancellations came in. They had all those orders in. They were producing buses like crazy in Philadelphia and Nashville, but the cancellations came in, and it wasn't just Brill. It was all the bus makers were having the same problem. So Victor Emanuel, who owned Avco Aviation and owned Consolidated Vultee and owned at this point owned ACF Brill and Hall Scott, which were sold off from Consolidated Vultee because they had other things to do and it wasn't making money. He needed somebody to come in there and take care of everything. And Charles Pirelli was free from Garwood Industries in Detroit, Michigan, and he was looking for work. So Victor Emanuel said, "Here, we have a job for you." So he got assigned to be president of ACF Brill in Philadelphia. And there were many problems at ACF Brill. The biggest one was a huge amount of inventory all over the place. They had buses that were manufactured but weren't sold. And there was a magazine called Printers Inc., which I think was an advertising magazine back at that time. And Charles Pirelli landed, and he gave an interview of what it was like at that time. I'm not sure when this was done, probably in the early 50s, but I just don't know. There's no date on this copy here. I had a library print this for me. And I'll go down through it because it's very interesting. Imagine a sea of buses and none of them sold. That was my first glimpse of ACF Brill Motors in May 1949 when I became president. Unfortunately, I learned from a trip around the country that other bus companies had been as optimistic as Brill, and that they too were trying to liquidate huge inventories. Tired, disgusted, and somewhat desperate, I was at the end of my prospect list when I learned via the grapevine that an old business acquaintance was negotiating with the Cuban government to replace the antiquated Havana trolley system with buses. Gazing out of my office window, I could almost see my buses zooming off the horizon to Cuba. Put in a call for Mr. blank, I told my secretary. Then, hello, this is Pirelli. Understand you're in the market for some buses, and I'd like to figure in on the order. My friend talked, and my spirits sank. He had been negotiating with a foreign concern for a number of buses that would have liquidated my inventory, and the foreigner's price was substantially lower than ACF Brill could possibly meet. As he was about to sign off, I said, "Well, can I come down anyway and talk to you about it?" He had no objections, but said the deal was pretty well closed and that he was leaving for Havana almost immediately. "I'll be leaving for Havana on the next plane," I said. I racked my brain while in the plane for some hard-hitting selling arguments. When I got to Havana airport, I had about decided I had made the trip in vain. But riding in the Cuban taxi to meet my prospect, I changed my mind. My rough ride was accompanied by a mixture of loud horns, screeching brakes, and weird engine noises. The driver's carefree attitude was matched by his fellow drivers who darted in and out, passing with murderous frequency. As we whirled through the rough, narrow, crowded streets, I felt that we were in imminent danger of disintegrating. I frantically asked if we were on a detour. "Oh no, senor," the driver replied. "It's always like this in Havana." Then I realized this ride had provided me the sales clincher I needed. I met my prospect. He beckoned me to a seat and told me firmly, "I don't quite know why you made this trip. Your price is much too high, or has it changed?" I assured him that it hadn't. "By the way, have you ridden around this town much?" I asked. "Oh, quite a bit," he replied. "Well," I said, "this is my first experience, and I had no idea that traveling in Havana was such a rough riding operation." "Well," he stammered, "it is a little rough." "A little rough? It's murder," I retorted. "These streets and drivers will tear these foreign buses to pieces in no time. Besides, our gasoline engine couldn't be better suited to these operating conditions with all the stops and starts and the engine idling you have here." Before he had a suitable answer, I added, "But I suppose you have provided for a large, well-trained force of service and repairmen," knowing darn well that he hadn't. "Well, no," he replied. "The cheaper bus isn't going to do much good standing idle for repairs. As you know, our bus is famous for its rugged construction and well worth the extra money." I pointed out that extra sturdy buses were necessary to meet Havana's ever-changing rough roads and drivers. He agreed on every point. "And I can give you immediate delivery." "Pirelli, if that's true, you've got yourself a deal," he said. I signed him up for 25 buses and fast delivery, and their performance ultimately brought in orders of 100 more. Needless to say, this broke the back of my inventory problem. And the moral of the bottom of the story is, know the customer's problems, solve them for orders. So that's how he got started. Very interesting story about Charles Pirelli. Hard-working man. His philosophy was production, produce, and sell.